all right. We are here. It is Monday. Let me make sure everything is on the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Looks like we're good. We are good to go. All systems go. All right. Hope everybody enjoyed the weekend. Weekends have been kind of meaningless to me for the last year, but you know, soon they will mean something again. Anyway, good morning, Jinx. Good to see you. Sam, good to see you. Eric, good to see you. Where's up, M? Welcome back. Johnny A, welcome back. Jinx says, I didn't realize the weekend went by. Yeah, honestly, I don't know what day it is anymore until I look at my computer or my phone. I have no idea. I have no clue as to what day it is. Um, but anyway, that's that's a story for another time. Thank you, folks that have come in early and started tapping away. I appreciate it. Eric, thank you for the heart me. Jinx, thank you for the heart me. And Sam, thank you for the heart me. For anyone who has come in who has not gotten a heart me yet, that's always the best thing to do first when you get into a live show, because that's what this platform judges the most. So that's up here somewhere near my name. There should be an orange heart. However, if for some reason you don't see the orange heart, Miss Tracy, Jenny, and all right, excellent. Thank you. If for some reason you don't see an orange heart at the top, don't worry. There's another way to get it. You go into the gift icon at the bottom row. There's a gift box. You click on that and you look for the heart me, not just any heart me. And that's how we get the party started. After that, it's all about sharing out the live and tapping. The easiest and fastest and best way to share the live is you take your finger, you hold it gently on the middle of the screen, somewhere around my nose or my giant forehead, and you will see that your friends list will pop up. And then next to each of their names is going to be the send button. So you just send. And if they did it differently, they might have done away with the send button. You just click on their names. And that includes any lists that you've made up, which can be up to 30 people. So that's a big bang for the buck there. All right, more people. Ames, Miss Tracy with the heart me. Thank you. Much appreciated. And we also have the heart goal. I think it's autumn love or something like that goal. I've got 100 up there for sale. Uh, as they say, 100. And you know, they're one coin each, one TikTok coin, which is around a penny. It's like 1.0001 cent or 1.01 cent, something like that. I think it's 1.001. I'm not sure exactly, but it's around a penny. All right. Jenny says, my brain just feels so scrambled, too much information at once, and none of it accurate. Yeah, I understand that feeling. I read something a long time ago, and I think maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It's hard to tell. It could have been 40 years ago for all I know, but it was during the internet age. So I don't know. Somewhere between 10 and 20 years ago, I think, I read the statistic that we now produce more information in a day worldwide than most people would see in their entire lifetime. So it's like trying to sip out of a fire hose. So I definitely get the feeling. Oh, look at that! The life goal was achieved. Spectacular. All right. That means it's time for another goal. Thank you all for gobbling up the autumn love uh, hearts. Let's see what we'll go for next. I usually keep them at a penny each, a TikTok coin each. Some people I've seen do 1,500 goals. That's a bit much. You're asking someone for $15. Let's do the what's up. Looks like what's up heart. Another heart. Let's try that one. Do. Okay, we got a new live goal up there. 100 what's up hearts. Okay, so let's see. What do we got? Looks like the Supreme Court Justice Thomas has jumped off the dump train. I've been critical of Clarence Uncle Thomas for a long time, because I think one day he was gonna wake up to see that his colleagues, listen to me, his colleagues were going to try to overturn. Oh my God! All right, there seems to be a civil conflict between my mouth and my brain, so let me try that again. His colleagues are going to try to overturn Loving v. Virginia, which, for those of you who might not remember, because it was a long, long time ago, in 1967, uh, it was before 1967, it was illegal to be in an interracial relationship, which I don't really understand because I believe there's only one race, but that's a story for another time. Um, but after that Supreme Court decision, interracial marriage or relationships, I think of any kind, but interracial marriage was made legal. And that's important for Justice Thomas because he has a YT wife, right? And I have no problem with that. I know some people of color have a real issue with that kind of stuff, but I was not able to be picky. I was raised in a white neighborhood, and as the old saying goes, when in Rome, do the Romans. So that's what I did. Um, but my first ex-wife, uh, was black, and I'm almost certain she still is. And that's who gave me my son, who is now 40. And my second ex-wife is Italian. So like I'm just team human race, you know. I'll bang anybody. I'm like Captain Kirk basically. Upper management says, "Did you get a snow bunny?" I didn't think of it that way, but you can you can categorize that any way you like. All right. So, my topic today, and let me introduce the show for folks who don't know me. This is Yoddah Live, and today is Monday, October 6th, 2025. I am Yoddah, and that is spelled Yoddah because film studios are litigious. So, upper management wants to know if I'm a baby boomer. I am. I caught the last year of baby boomers, which is 1964. The first year was 1946. Yep, I slid in during last year of baby boomage. So yeah. Okay, so as I was saying, my topic today is America in distress. That is mostly because I believe that America has entered a fascist state, a fascist stage, if you will. Hopefully, it's a stage. Hopefully, we move on to the next stage very quickly. But as part of the evidence that I'm using for that, and it's actually quite a long list, but one of the headlines this morning for the New York Times is Judge again blocks guard deployment as dump expands his targets. Of course, they used his real name, but I try not to say it if I don't have to. Michigan is losing business after business because of tears. I'm guessing that. Oh, you mean tariffs? Is that what you were trying to say? Um, so yeah, that's another whole ridiculous thing. But you know, Dump has publicly done what I have never seen or heard any other president do, which is declare half the country, whoever didn't vote for him, as the enemy within. And he is waging battle against whoever didn't vote for him, whoever he doesn't like, whoever criticizes him, whoever doesn't agree with him. You know, even if someone hands him the facts, if he doesn't like the facts, he fires them. In any case, this thing with trying to deploy troops in cities is insane. Aside from being illegal, aside from the fact that he doesn't have congressional authority to do that, aside from the fact that he's circumventing the role of governors in America, you know, he's just pressing on. No matter what judges tell him, no matter what the Supreme Court has told him, he's even defied their order, right? So we have a lawless president in America, and nothing right now seems to be stopping him. There are places where he's slowing down, and that's good, I guess, but nothing is stopping him. I think the only things that might stop him are Father Time and or someone usurps his power from, you know, his inner circle, which, you know, I'm almost certain that the long-term plan is to throw Dump under the bus. Hold on, someone's typing in all caps. David, you're making great points, but um, you can stop typing in caps, please. And David, well, why? Because I've asked you to. But now, but since you're being cute, I was about to invite you up to have a conversation with you, but because you're being a douchebag, I'm just going to block you. So there you go. Okay. So now we don't have to hear this propaganda parrot bullshit anymore. Look at this. Leftists are liars who hate the traditional family and hate Christians. Wow. I mean, that you could tell that David is a Donnie Dump simp, a grown man who is simping for Donnie. Hey, Jessica, good to see you. Thank you for the heart me. Um, can you imagine a grown man who is a cheerleader for a billionaire who doesn't even know he's alive, and if he did, wouldn't give a fuck about him? Isn't that amazing? Grown man just repeating nonsense. Leftists are liars who hate the traditional family. Oh, you mean, so Republicans love the traditional family, right? That's why they voted for a guy who cheated on all three of his wives, right? That's why they voted for a guy, because they're so traditional, who paid an adult film star to keep silent about the affair he had against his mistress, who he also paid. Because people like to focus on Stormy Daniels. She got 130,000, but McCullough got 150,000. He had a mistress, long-term mistress. They were together for a while, and he was cheating on her with Stormy. Kind of. So are those the traditional family values that David the idiot was talking about? I'm just curious. And they hate Christmas. This, for a group of people who consistently say absolutely absurd and ridiculous things, this war on Christmas thing is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And usually around Christmas, I tell this story, but I'll tell it now just because this moron reminded me of it. So in 1941, there was a film called Holiday Inn, and Bing Crosby sang Happy Holiday, singular, Happy Holiday. And as time went on, Andy Williams recorded it, but they changed it to Happy Holidays, plural. And in the original version, and in the film version, and in the radio version, the word Christmas does not appear at all, because it was very common for people to understand that there's many religions in the world and in America. So out of courtesy and respect, people would say Happy Holiday to be inclusive and to be neighborly and to be kind. So this idea that saying Happy Holidays is somehow a stance against anything is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Right? Let me catch up to some of these comments. Man, you guys are typing fast and furious. I love it. Upper management. Who was my favorite president? I mean, the president that I was most excited about was Barack Obama, although he did a couple things that maybe that not maybe that are really like awful. The drone program was really awful to me. But I think he was in my lifetime. I go back to Nixon, right? So in my lifetime, he was the one who inspired me the most. Most of his speeches made me cry, and I can't say that for most other presidents. Ms. Tracy says, not going to be able to afford Christmas watch. Right, Ames. That's how I feel. Multiple holidays around Christmas. What's the big deal? Yeah, I think at last count, there's like 14 religions that have their high holy days around Christmas time. Because that story of a virgin birth, healing the sick, fucking hell, my mouth just doesn't want to work this morning. Healing the sick, feeding the multitudes, and all that stuff. That's an old story. Christians were not the first ones to tell that story by a long shot. That story came up about 1800 years before the Christians wrote it, and I think about 50 different religions use that story. I think in Hinduism they have that story. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Vishnu has the same story. There's a bunch of them. Oh, that's a good point. Hold on, let me catch up to that. Maisie says, I'm a Christian and love Christmas, but realize it's pagan. Yeah. Yeah. Weddings, marriage actually is a pagan thing. You guys are triggering all sorts of memories for me right now. Originally, the Catholic Church wanted nothing to do with marriage because they were snooty. They were like, oh, that's some pagan bullshit, right? Let the unwashed masses have that, right? And then what happened was that the church began to function the way a county courthouse functions now, which is to say they recorded everything for whatever region they were responsible for. So any land sales, any dowries, when men and women got together and one family paid a dowry to the other family. So they were seeing all this money trading hands and were like, hey, why aren't we involved in this? So right around the 1100s, they sanctified marriage. And because in the Bible, polygamy was common. They didn't have that union in the same way that pagans did. And when they read the Bible, I think a lot of that was backfilled to please the pagans. You know, um, yeah. So there you go. So I would say essentially, Catholicism is a Frankenstein religion because they borrowed from a lot of things. Even the Ten Commandments comes from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I think it's called, or the Tibetan Book of Dying. I forget which one it is. Jessica says they adopted pagan holidays to help ease the transition for all the pagans they wanted to convert. Yeah, yeah. That's that whole Council of Nicaea thing. And some people try to downplay it. I don't understand why, because it's pretty obvious what was going on there. They had all of the bishops and all of the high priests from around the region representing a multitude of religions and beliefs. And they met once a year for 26 years to edit the Bible. And, here's more evidence of that. The oldest known Bible is referred to as the Sinai text. And between the Sinai text and the King James Version, there are over 13,000 differences. So that's how much King James took out of the original text. And I suspect that a lot of the stuff he took out was along the lines of what Christ said, the fictional literary character of Christ said, the temple of God is within, you don't need the church, that kind of stuff. I have a feeling that there was more stuff like that would have taught people about their own divinity and their own grace and their own power and their own relationship with the universe, etc. That's what I assume. I don't know. You can't know what's what's gone except by comparing the two, and certainly I'm not going to do that. But that's what I assume King James took out of it. Because remember, he was a king, and kings have agendas, and their main agenda is to rule, right? So to think that King James had pure intentions when he created the Bible is kind of silly. Not created, when he edited and commissioned a new Bible, it's kind of silly. And back then they didn't have the printing press. That would come a few years later, but so that meant every copy of the Bible had to be written by hand, right? Which is a massive undertaking. That's why it took them 7 years to do it, right? And by the way, there's a couple of spots in the Bible, I forget exactly where, but you could tell that someone lost their place because they wrote the same sentence twice, you know. So that's just a thing. Someone said something about Google. Ms. Tracy said, I heard that Google is trying to buy the right to the KJV Bible. Okay, good for them. I mean, I think it is the best selling book in the world, but let's see if that's still true. I know for the longest time it was. Probably J.K. Rowling might have beaten their record. Who knows? But what is the best selling book of all time? Yep, it is the Bible. An estimated 5 to 7 billion copies sold and distributed worldwide. The best-selling work of fiction is generally considered to be Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, with over 500 million copies sold. Wow, I thought J.K. would have been number 2. Apparently not. Don Quixote is an old, old, old book. And I think Christianity probably set the tone for MAGA hats because, Christians want to claim that they're so persecuted. I mean, you know, they're one of the largest religions. I think Muslims are larger, but they're a huge religion. They're the number one religion in America, but yet they're constantly crying that they're persecuted, which is what MAGA hats are doing all the time, right? Just constantly crying that they are persecuted. Anyway, I've been babbling on and on for a while. If anybody wants to come up, feel free to request up. You can either click the request box on screen. If you don't see it, go down to the bottom row, and there's a red and blue person or people overlapping. There are red and blue people overlapping. You can click on that and ask up, and we can talk more about America in distress or anything else, really. I don't care. It's Monday, and I'm groggy. Let's see, what do we got here? I love the fact that you folks are typing so many great comments. Chaz says Christianity is known as the great borrower. Yeah. Yeah, they took a lot. I mean, the story of Horus and Osiris seems to be pretty obvious that they ripped that off completely. And Jessica is going to come up and join us. All right, then. Jessica's loading in. There you are. How you doing, Jessica?
I'm well. How are you? Good morning.
Excellent. Good morning. How are you progressing with the C19?
Much better today. I can make it a whole like 4 hours without an inhaler.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
yay.
Progress.
um, so did you see the great Timu Goebbels, or as I now like to call him, Pee Wee German, his new tweets that he put out last night?
No, no. Yesterday, I basically blacked out the news. I didn't want to see anything yesterday, so
That's
no, I
fair.
haven't seen it. What did he say now?
Now he's calling. So Dump tried to, of course, organize the Oregon National Guard against Portland, and then a judge blocked that. So then they
Hmm.
tried to so then they tried to go for the California National Guard and send them. So then a judge blocked that as well. Now keep in mind that the judge that blocked that is a Trump appointed judge.
Right.
We're just going to start there. But so then after that happened, I think it was after the first block, Pee Wee German decided to, which is just great. I love
It
it.
is.
Sorry. Um, Decided to say that he now considers all Democrats to be T groups, and
Yeah.
that they need to start going after all Democratic judges, lawyers, and lawmakers as terrorists. So, yay! Also, the three-letter agency uh, pew-pewed a woman in Chicago. That happened as well. They were zip tying babies. Um, Citizen babies at that. They raided an entire apartment complex,
Yeah.
and anyone who was a person of color got drug out, including unclothed children. Babies as young as like 18 months old were zip tied with their hands behind their backs. Yeah.
So for these mouth breathers who keep insisting that everything is just fine and nothing is happening, I hope, even though book learning ain't their thing, I hope that maybe they find a documentary to watch or something about Germany in World War II, because all this round 'em up bullshit sounds
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same to me as what happened in Germany in the 1930s.
Yeah.
you know.
You're not far off. The Night of the Broken Glass is would be a really good one for them to start looking into. Breaking into people's homes, rounding people up indiscriminately. Yeah, you guys should go do some reading. I know it's not your strong suit, but
Well, that's
give it
why
a
if
go.
you don't want to read, I'm guessing there's tons of documentaries that they can watch. There's tons of videos on YouTube for them to watch.
Yeah.
Not that YouTube is a historical record, but there are noteworthy channels on there, like Hardcore History is a good one. That really take extraordinarily deep dives into history. Like
Hmm.
I remember I was driving home from Pittsburgh once, which I think was about an 8 hour drive, and I
Hmm.
listened to one episode that he had on World War II. So like, this guy, he really gets into shit.
Yeah.
And so like, and again, World War II is the most famous example, but there have been 27 or 28 incidents like that since World War II, right? There were a lot before as well, but people's memories just don't want to stretch back that far. But you know, just name of the show. It's called Hardcore History, Robert. Hardcore History. It's
I'm
it's
definitely gonna. Is it on like a specific platform?
it's on the U-shaped tube.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah,
I'm gonna add that to my list. So, because
yeah.
you know
Yeah,
me in
if you're
history.
ever just, if you're home and doing housework or whatever, or out and about driving, whatever, that's what I love about podcasts is that they're very passive. You could do other stuff while you're listening to them. Traffic Man says that he puts on my morning show now
Oh,
while he works, so that's kind of cool. So,
all
like,
right.
it's just what I like about his show, because I don't think he is like an accredited historian. He's just extraordinarily passionate about history, and he gets into the weeds, man. Like he finds out like what the people liked for breakfast and stuff. Like he gets way into it. Like his retelling of the run up to World War One,
Mm.
absolutely amazing. Facts I had never heard before, and several of them. Because I mean, I have a cursory idea of a lot of big historical events. I think most of us are kind of the same way. We vaguely remember the boring shit they taught us in school, and then you pick up things as you go along. But this guy, he gets as deep into stuff. Like he'll read 20 books on a subject just so that he can understand, because different historians focus on different things, so he gets to see what everybody focused on and then pieces things together from historical documents and stuff like that. I find it very impressive. I don't know if he's been doing them lately, but that was one of my go-to channels. Let's see what's going on with hardcore history.
I mean, even if he hasn't been doing them lately, I'm sure from the sound of it, you said that you spent 8 hours listening to one.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's plenty that people can catch up
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And let's see. So this is Dan Carlin. That's his name. Videos. Oh, so 3 months ago, he did an episode. Sledgehammer and Big Shot. I don't even know what the fuck that is. And sometimes he has historians on talking to him and stuff like that, but he hasn't done much this year. But I understand why, because he researches so thoroughly before he does anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like that makes sense because it's got to take some time to do that level of digging. I know, like whenever I go into a piece of legislation that I'm like really digging into, I mean, just for one single piece of legislation, it can take me, several days just digging
Yeah.
into all of the intricacies of it.
I mean,
So,
one bill alone could be, hundreds, if not thousands of pages. So
yeah.
I totally get that. So let's
Yeah, I think
see.
the longest I've ever spent on a piece of legislation is. just shy of a month.
I totally can see that. Yeah, just to give you an indication, his last three episodes were basically all about the same subject. And the first one was 8 months ago, the second one was 6 months ago, and the most recent one was 3 months ago. So he just goes all in. Oh, and I think these were all addendums. And so, like, typically, like, the first one's over an hour, the second one's 2.5 hours, the third one's an hour and a half. So, he did, let's see, Hardcore History 72, Mania for Subjugation Part 2. I have no idea what that's about, but look at this 3 hours and 51 minutes. Part 1 was 4 hours and 11 minutes. These are single episodes.
Fuck yeah, I'm for it.
I'm going to ask Dan to send me a hat because I just sold his show to a bunch of people. Oh man, but yeah, I am, you know, this morning I didn't get into the news too much. I was just like, let me just try to scan the headlines. And when I saw this headline about a judge blocking Dump again, I'm like, how can people look at this guy? Because all these 2A idiots that are like, and of course, if you own weapons and you enjoy the right to carry, I have no argument with you. But these people that like were like, in case of a tyrannical government, blah blah blah, all these wannabe
Right.
Minutemen and shit. And now it's
Yeah,
like,
that's what
well,
gets
what the
me.
fuck are you doing now, buddy? You've been training for this your whole life, you
Yeah.
know? And what they've done to justify it, because, people need cognitive continuity so that they can feel
Mhm.
right and well and good in the world. So instead of just admitting, yeah, we fucked up, we never were about fighting a tyrannical government, they've convinced themselves that what they're seeing now is not an example of a tyrannical government.
Yeah, of course. I did just get a couple of headlines come in. Um, Illinois, the state of Illinois is now, as of this morning, moving forward with a lawsuit to sue the Trump administration for their deployment of National Guard to Chicago.
There you go. And for those of you, sorry you missed it again, Robert, it is called Hardcore History. The host is Dan Carlin, but if you type in Hardcore History, it'll come up right at the top as it did for me. And Eric, yeah, I agree. This is 100% a tyrannical government. I've, again, I've never considered myself an extraordinarily smart person. I have I have delighted in the fact that people perceive me as smart. I enjoy that, of course, because that's lovely praise. But I don't walk around thinking I'm brilliant and so smart. But I read English and I understand it. And so when I read history and I understand not only the events, but the context of the events and the meanings of the events and the consequences of the events, I look at this I look at this thing that goes on planet Earth, which is dictatorships, and they all are the same. There are
Mhm.
slightly different levels of brutality. There's, when you get into the weeds about the small details, there might be some minor variations. But when
Mhm.
you talk about the broad strokes, what is a dictator? What is an authoritarian government? We are checking all of those boxes right now. All of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like, I kind of like you just touched on they keep trying to convince themselves that this isn't a tyrannical government. And I need all of them to understand that's not going to save you. Let's take WW2 for example, right? So of course, I've talked about this many times about how the the ruling power will inundate people with all the bad shit, and they do their shock and awe campaign, and they slowly increase the society's tolerance for what they'll accept, and then the next thing you know, you have entire villages living next to the camps and just, oh, well, it's not that bad because I'm not the one doing it. That doesn't save you because guess what happened after they lost? They had all of those villagers who lived next to the camps go into the camps and help clean up the bodies.
Right.
Just because you convince yourself that it's not that bad doesn't mean you escape the consequences.
Right. Right. And that was something that came out when Mehdi Hassan had his 1 versus 20 mouth breathers. You
Oh,
know,
I
this
haven't seen
one,
that one.
oh my God. It's now become kind of famous on the U-shaped tube.
Hmm.
Um,
I
Mehdi
think I've seen
Hassan is a
clips from.
brilliant man.
Love
We're
Hassan. I
Yeah,
love him. Yes.
absolutely a brilliant man. Like he is a fiercely intelligent man. If you're debating with him and something you say is 99.99% true, he will know what the 0.1% is that's not
I love
true.
that.
You know, or 0.01% rather, but he just when he prepares for any kind of topic, he's a lot like the hardcore history guy. He just takes it from top to bottom. He contextualizes everything and he retains all of this information. So when people are debating him, it's embarrassing, right? So here he was. Jubilee does this thing, one versus a crowd, like 1 versus 20. And in this case, it was, MAGA hats versus Mehdi Hassan. And one of the guys who subsequently lost his job for his insane comments about fascism, um, he was talking about like I'm going to be all right. They're not coming after me. And Mehdi Hassan said the perfect reply, which is in keeping with what you were just talking about. He said, you know that authoritarians tend to murder everybody, right? Like
Right.
they don't stop at the first group that they target ever, ever, ever,
Hmm.
right? So here's Dump. I mean, just look at the progression just with immigrants, right? What was the campaigning about? The campaigning was about, and you could look at all of his rallies last year. Because I watched the Midas Touch every day for over 2 years, they would play a clip from his rallies every day. And every day he talked about going after the criminals, the criminal immigrants, the criminals, the criminals, the criminals, poisoning the blood of our country, which is a schmatzy slogan, and blah, 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 all that shit, right? And so the MAGA hats, because, they claim to be Christian, but they don't do what Christians do because Christians are supposed to welcome in immigrants. But, just ignore the book that you claim to base your life on. And so they all voted for this because they were like, oh, finally, we're going to get rid of the brown people. Why? We don't know. It doesn't matter. We just want to get rid of them. Right. And then immediately it went from, oh, we're going after criminals to, oh, we're locking up people with no criminal record. Well, wait a second. What do you mean? What are you doing? Then you went from immigrants, immigrants with criminal records, immigrants with no criminal records, then citizens, you know. And so, like, this progression is a great example of what Mehdi Hassan was talking about. They never stop. And now they've ratcheted it up to Democrats. Now the enemy is Democrats. How fucking insane is that? If people don't recognize that as a fascist thing, a fascist ideology, I don't know what to tell you at
Hmm.
this point. How what are you not understanding?
Yeah. And it's funny to me too whenever they kind of catch a little glimpse, right? For instance, I just this morning came across a video from a um, not a very large, but like, she's got a decent following, MAGA account who there had been another video that somebody had posted, and people mistook the person that was in that video for her, and they thought that she was like this liberal, right? So she had to make a video saying, I can't believe how much hate and just nasty violent things people have been saying in my inbox because they think that I'm a liberal. I'm a Christian Republican. We don't do that. I'm like, honey, the call is coming from inside the house. Like,
Right.
you guys think that liberals are the bad? She's like, you guys are acting like liberals. Like, you think that the liberals are bad because what? We might call you dumb
Right.
and say some mean things that you don't like, but yet the Republic, like, I have received dozens of unaliving threats to my inbox. I have received dozens of grape threats to my inbox, some of which saying that they're going to make my child watch while they
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And it's all come from MAGA Republicans.
Of
So
course.
when are these people going to realize that you cannot compare liberals calling you mean names and saying that you're stupid to the actual vitriol and violence that comes from your side? They're not comparable.
Not at all. And this whole like giant attempt to gaslight people into believing that political violence comes from liberals is just pathetic. It's like, hey, man, we all have eyes and ears. We see the news. We see the description of the person. We get to see their room. We get to see their online history. It's obvious where this is coming from, And I mean, I think over the entire span of like the last 60 some odd years, it's 75%, depending on how you count it, up to 90%. In the last 20 years, it's been 100% right wing. 100%. Absolute insanity. I just don't get, you know, it's one thing to be dumb. It's another thing to just completely try to fabricate reality and tell us, like, I've been seeing clips from around the right wing propaganda machine, and they are really committed to this lie about who are the perpetrators. Hey, Penelope, good to see you. Thank you for the heart, me. Um, you know, it, how do you deal with people like this that just refuse to embrace reality and facts?
I used to try to reason with them. Now I just make fun of them for the most part.
Yeah, that's
Because
kind of what I do. Yeah,
I mean, there's if I can tell that not all hope is lost, and they're actually willing to engage in conversation
right.
and listen, then I will do that. I will engage in conversation. I will share resources with them. Um, but if they're just too far gone, there's no point. There's no point in even trying to educate them. They've made the decision that they're not going to educate themselves or be educated by anyone else. So at that point, you might as well just have fun with it.
I agree. I agree. True Blue is funny. I love it when people listening to my live show tell me to get a job. Like, what are you doing here, man?
I know.
That's the funniest thing.
Oh, God.
Someone asked earlier, what do we do about all this? And I want to see if I can get to. Okay, there it is. Wezapem said, so what do we do, Yoda? How do we stop it? So I'm going to keep saying this over and over again because I think it's the only option. Because clearly the courts aren't going to stop it because they're confined by the rules that they have in the court system. They'll catch up to all of these people eventually. Because if you remember, there were people that were getting arrested for WW2 crimes like 70 years later. So, you know, they'll get dealt with. But in the short term, it's going to come down to citizens. I think that's the only thing that's going to make a change. Again, I keep referring to Jimmy Kimmel because that's a great example. Here was a company that was facing pressure from the American government. And let's remember, the American government is a juggernaut with endless resources. So when they're putting pressure on you, in this case, in the form of the FCC chair publicly threatening all of the companies that they don't like, the fact that they caved to the pressure and fired Jimmy Kimmel, but then they felt even more pressure from American citizens is very significant to me. And before I continue, let me say hello to, it looks like SB2.
Oh, Yoda, you know me as Samantha. We've been on panels together before.
How you doing, Samantha?
I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for asking. So what's on your mind?
Well, actually, I'm a meta-flight nurse, and I had said at the beginning of this government shutdown, I had said, I really do feel like this is a hill that the Democrats need to unalive on. But I recently have kind of changed my opinion. Not that I don't think that this is an emergency, it's just the Democratic messaging on this that I think is wrong. I think, let's reopen the government because this is actually going to be an opportunity for the Democrats to shine, and this is why I say it. This notion that we give undocumented immigrants insurance is absolute BS, and we all know
More
it.
gaslighting.
Yeah, it's, Mike Johnson coming out and doing layers of lies over layers of lies to cover up the Epstein files. But at the end of the day, what actually happens is, we have the EMTALA law. Those that don't understand it need to go look it up. But we have it. You come to the emergency room, brief synopsis. Everybody gets treated for your complaint. You're stabilized. And it's all levels of acuity. Mike Johnson saying Americans are not getting treated because immigrants are there. No, everybody comes in 1 through 5. 1, you're on the unalivement door. 5, you could have gone to your primary care doctor, but you probably don't have one because you're uninsured.
Right.
That's how it works. And then the hospitals go and they, in order to stay open, use government funding and they say, look, this is what we billed for and this is what we reimbursed for and this is what we still need to cover the costs. And, this is how it's worked for decades. And that's not attached to a person. American citizens are just as uninsured or underinsured as migrants with no insurance. So I think come November 1st, when enrollment comes around, and we already know that the big beautiful bill is cutting tons of subsidies as it is, and people have to make, insurance decisions regardless of whether the government is open or not, and they decide that they can't, this is just an expenditure that is, one that they just cannot afford because they can't even afford life as it is, with it going up, their insurance rates, because we're doing all of this crap to Medicaid and Medicare and private health care. I think that this, by January 1st, when these true money installments hit people with their insurance and they can't afford it, and their kids with chronic illnesses or themselves with chronic illnesses are not getting the care they were getting, I think the Democrats will have an argument in the midterms. So, people want instant gratification. So let's open up the government. And the FAFO kind of statement will come out on this particular issue. This is one that's huge. And Americans, I don't think, see this train wreck coming. The farmers are now feeling the effects. Now the American people as a whole will start to feel the effects. So I think this is one that the Democrats have a great argument on, but their messaging is poor. So open up the government. November 1st, Mike Johnson saying 7.5 weeks we can negotiate this. No, you have 3 weeks before this stuff starts to really impact people. So I say open up the government and let's find out. I don't know. Other people may think differently, but that's just kind of my take on that one particular situation that we're facing right now.
Well, historically, the Democrats have always been pretty bad at messaging, and I think that that's one of their major downfalls. But there is also, so like, I've only heard a couple of people touch on this, and I really think that they need to as well. Like, even somebody in the comments mentioned, oh, it's because the Democrats want health care for immigrants. So, all this does is show me that you guys have not actually read the continuing resolution that was put forth by the Democrats. The only time that in the continuing resolution that the Democrats called for, health care for immigrants, there's actually qualifiers, so you have to be of legal status to qualify. Also, it really kind of goes more into Medicaid, and that is funded by the state. That has nothing to do with the federal government. Medicaid is done by the state. Okay, so that comes down, but remember, you guys are all about states' rights, right? States making their own policies, so better keep that energy up. But yes, kind of like you were talking about, within Tala, it also typically, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it also only cover up to like most hospitals to provide the minimum standard of care, basically get them to where they are no longer emergent, and then advise them to take other routes after that.
EMTALA covers the stabilization of
Yeah.
somebody. So yes, in a sense it does. With Americans as immigrants, everybody, if there is an issue that needs to be seen by a specialist, we hand out names and numbers, but those that are uninsured know that that's not going to happen. And so what happens is the emergency room becomes a revolving door for chronic problems, which is not what it's intended to be, but that's what it is. And with the state funding of Medicaid, the states that are truly the most underfunded are Republican red states. And they are oftentimes funded by blue states because of their tax, the tax issues and the people that are paying in taxes. So the reality is that this is going to affect more of the people who voted for this man than they realize. It's going to affect all Americans, but in reality, this is one thing that really hits their base. The farming situation really hit the farming base that voted for Trump. And now they're going to look for their second bailout as they got in the first one. But this hits red states significantly. And I think that if people would read what the big beautiful bill included, just like you said, people haven't read the continuing resolution, people also haven't read the big beautiful bill and what it does to Americans. I don't understand how Mike Johnson can stand up there and say the Democrats just want to give, health care to, undocumented immigrants. That has never been the case. It is not the case now, and it's not ever going to be the case. That's just not how the law works. He's trying to use EMTALA as a way to say, oh, but Americans are getting a backseat to health care because, undocumented immigrants come into the emergency room too. That is not it either. He must not understand levels of acuity and how triage works.
He doesn't. He just is lying. He knows what the truth is. He's just lying.
Yeah,
But what's sad is American people, and I'm not saying that American people are ignorant, but American people don't understand that system either. And so they hear this and they're like, oh gosh, I'm going to go to the emergency room and my issue is going to take a back seat because it's going to be filled with, Hispanics and this. That is
Once
just
again, brown people ruining
BS.
their lives.
Yes,
right.
exactly. And it's just absolute BS. It is complete BS.
Now
Um,
let me take a moment to address True Blue because I have a feeling that True Blue is in a room with not enough oxygen for his small brain. Um, I first of all, I know you're a punk because all the bullshit you're saying on a live show from the comfort and safety of your keyboard is stuff that you would never say to me face to face. And I know that because none of you fucking punks ever say anything to me face to face because you're little boys, and the reason that I'm not working is because I have enough money not to work for now. You don't. Yeah, I bet you couldn't take a year off from work like I did, you piece of shit little idiot. So anyway, now I'm going to get rid of him because I just wanted him to hear me say that before I blocked him. Because what a nuisance. What a little twerp. My
And
God.
he wants you to tell him where you are. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
like that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I
I
could be
will.
anywhere in 24 hours. So like if anyone really wants me to show up, I'll go and I'll show up by myself and empty-handed, and I guarantee you they won't keep that same energy when they look at me in my eyes from 3 feet away. Because it never happens. And I'm not saying any of this because I think I'm some badass or tough guy. I just these people never confront me like this in real life. I'm a fairly big dude and I have a severe resting bitch face. I don't look like someone that should be bothered, and so they never bother me. But online, they get all like uppity, and then they send me the same kind of stuff Jessica gets in my DMs. Not
I
quite
mean,
as severe as that, but it's just
I can
hilarious.
I can tell you personally, my old account, which is why now you probably don't recognize me. My old account was removed simply because I made a statement, and I'll repeat the same statement because I still stand firm on it. Many people, when they were talking about CK and all that, I said, you know what? As a trauma nurse for 25 years, I've watched children who this traumatic event that was shown on TV occurs to children every single damn day, and I do not think the way that he was unalived is appropriate, but I don't think the way he lived was either. And I'm not going to salute or applaud that. And I don't think the comments that he made were appropriate. And in fact, he unalived the way he warranted our Second Amendment should be
Yeah.
commended and commanded for. So, in that respect, you got to say, okay, well, you know, you at least unalived for your cause, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I begin getting, unalivement threats, and then how they find, I get called. I don't care. I've been a nurse in Oklahoma for 25 years. I don't care that you go and look up whether I have my nurse practitioner license. I don't care that you go and look up. I really don't care. But people did, and then I live on a ranch. I'm a widow. I live on a ranch by myself with 9 horses, a bunch of goats, and my house was spray painted, and a brick was thrown through my front door. Um, I don't get the need for, because my opinion, I once again, and it's also because I made a point of, we disregarded 9/11 this year, where thousands of Americans through a actual T-Rust event occurred. We ignored it because that was the day after CK's unalivement. And it was oh so important for the president to try to stay awake for his portion of being there, but also to bring people there that have, put conspiracy theories out there and don't even believe it occurred. And it was beyond me. But then the vice president has to go rush to the aid of his widow, and miss part of the event. I found appalling. But then I also found appalling because my husband, at the age of 45, unalived in my front yard. There is no way in hell, in the viewing, in the moment when I went to go view him, I would have ever had a microphone on me and videotaped it. I found it disgusting and a ploy for media attention. I really did. I thought that was just absolutely, I don't know. On a human level, I don't even know how to express how disgusting that was. I had 2 teenagers at the time. I would have never wanted them and myself, when we personally went to go view him, to have been videotaped. That is a private moment. I don't understand that. I really don't.
Well,
But for whatever reason,
that's the world we live in right now. Is everybody's ready to become a star at any moment? But I've made the same points that you did about CK. I put out a 2 or 3 videos about it because it's like the irony is, as you indicated earlier, that nobody on the left that I saw advocated for this kind of thing, but he did. He said specifically fatalities are worth it for 2A. Okay.
Mhm.
So, okay, you got what you wanted. And then, the reaction of like deifying this guy was disgusting to me because like when the people in Minnesota got gunned down and all this other nonsense that happened with these psychopaths, you know, Dump couldn't even remember their names when he was asked about them. you
Yeah, we
know?
can't put the flag at half mast because, you know, the governor didn't ask for it.
Right.
But there's a clip of you saying, "I wouldn't call him. He's deranged." You know, all the normal,
Exactly.
typical BS
Exactly.
shit that he says about people he used against the governor during that period of time. And, you know, it was very quick to immediately say this is a left radical person that did this, when in reality, we know the vast majority of this stuff happens. And I hate to say right or left, because I think it's just, at this point in time, our politics is just what's right and wrong, not left and right anymore. But it comes from a lot of right leaning political people. So I don't, I just found, and then her speech and her, you know, this widow's battle cry will be heard across. It was just very, you know, good Lord, come on now.
You're
You know,
talking
this,
you're talking
Amongst the
about the
pyrotechnics.
schmatzy rally that was masquerading as a funeral?
yeah,
Well, I will
exactly.
say this. I have to be fair and balanced. The fact that she extended forgiveness to the assailant, I thought was a really good moment. I thought a lot of it was performative, but uh, I'm a walking lie detector because I was in sales. I've been in sales for over 40 years, and I had to sit across from people who were trying to lie to me constantly, right? And so you learn how to pick these things out. It's a combination of many factors. Body language has a lot to do with it, and I thought some of what she was doing was performative, and some of it felt genuine. And even though that might not be an important distinction, the fact that she publicly forgave her husband's assailant, I think, was a good thing to do. I think it helped bring the temperature down a little bit. And whether she meant it or not is immaterial, right? So, she
I
still did it.
I didn't, when I heard her say it, I'm going to be honest, I just kind of thought, yeah, right, whatever. This is, you know, but then the stark contrast of Donald Trump coming up and saying, well, I'm sorry, but, you know, I hate my enemies. And, you know, him go, I wish nothing bad for them. I wish all bad for them. And it did show in that moment exactly who he is, but it doesn't matter to his base. They really like that. That's
Yeah.
what they feed into.
They're driven
So
by
it was,
fear and hatred mainly, That's,
yeah. And Charlie Kirk was no stranger to that concept of instilling fear. Just by, you know, and I know a lot of people say, well, you took it out of context. I don't care what the
oh,
context
I
was or
I hate
wrong.
that. That's another attempt to gaslight that makes me sick. It's like I
Yeah.
have eyes and ears, man. Stop telling me I don't know the fucking context. I watched it. I saw the man say what he said. This is a typical technique that Kirk used, and a lot of these fucking idiots use the same technique. It's childish, but if you're talking to dumb people, it works. Like he started off this thing by saying, if I walk onto a plane and I see a black pilot, I'm going to
Yes.
be nervous, right? Because I'm going to think he's some kind of, DEI
Yes.
hire. And he's like, and I'm not that guy, but it's like, yeah, you are that guy. You just fucking said you were that guy.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what context do
And
I need for that?
that's the biggest one that they say, well, you're taking it out of context. I don't really give a shit what anything else was said around that. That statement alone says enough for me, that you literally look at people and you're profiling them based on race, what you think they can and cannot do. So that just to me is like, you know, you don't even know how the FAA works, Charlie. So sit down and shut up for a minute, because that's irrelevant at this point, because you have, you know, delegitimize the entire program itself. I find most of the things he said, anything that anybody said, can be taken out of context. But his statements were direct and they were meant for shock value. And I think that that's exactly what Trump does. And that's the propaganda machine that he has manipulated so well, is that shock value. And the most recent AI videos of the Grim Reaper and him doing the cowbell. It's all shock value dumb shit. And he has said it himself. Smart people don't like me. There's a good reason. There is a good
He
reason. We
said, I
see through
love
all
the
of this.
uneducated. They try to tell us that didn't exist, and I found the video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
I
mean, he. most recently said, smart people don't like me. So, I mean, so dumb people do. Is that what you're saying?
That is what
I,
he's
I've also
saying.
I've also had people tell me, like, specifically with Charlie, like, oh, quit demonizing him, and like, oh, it's impolite to speak ill of the unalived. I'm like, I'm literally quoting him.
Yeah.
If you think that I'm demonizing him when I'm literally quoting him, then maybe you need to actually, I don't know, take some time to listen to what he actually fucking said
Yeah.
instead of just martyring someone because you think that they stood for Christian values, when in fact, he did not. He
You know,
bastardized them
I
to fit his agenda.
I'm
How you
considering
unalive is
I'm
not.
considering calling myself Christian because you obviously don't have to do anything, right? You can
Right.
just say you're Christian and you don't have to act like a Christian. You don't have to follow the teachings of Christ. You don't have to read the Bible. You don't have to follow the Bible. You can just say you're Christian. You could just say you have traditional family values. And you could just say you back the blue. And you could just say you're for the Constitution and fiscal responsibility. You could say all of that stuff and have no evidence of it whatsoever.
Well, and what really irritates me is people have tried to put him in the likes of like Martin Luther King. That to me is just a statement of ignorance because Charlie made no movement that brought our country together or tried to make it better. He really tried very hard to divide us, and he has said, and he, in his own words, he said Martin Luther King was a waste of time and his movement was stupid. In
Yeah.
his own, that was
The
his
civil
own
rights
opinion.
movement was stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was his
I mean,
own.
how do you not think that a person like that is not racist when he vilifies every person of color, when he prejudges every person of color? They don't know what DEI is. They keep saying DEI is about race. It's not. Like,
No, the largest
again,
demographic
read
that benefits
something.
is white women.
Yeah, but even its intent, the intent of DEI had nothing to do with race. It was really mostly
Right.
about class and fairness. It was basically saying if you're going to put an ad for a job in the rich neighborhood, put the same ad in the poor neighborhood too.
Hmm.
That's basically it. If you're going to have a Christmas party, let other religions have their holiday party also. That's basically what the foundation of DEI was. And it was started basically by Lyndon Johnson, of all people. you know,
Right.
so they act like it's some vast conspiracy on the left to hire incompetent people. And then I'm like, hey, how about you look at the entire administration and tell me how many competent people you find, including
Oh,
president.
that is in and of itself, that is hilarious. And I find the silence, I was looking for something that gave me some form of hope. And I will say, last Tuesday, the silence of the generals during that awful, stupid, ridiculous Pete Hegseth slash Donald Trump, I don't know which one was worse that day. Either way, their silence gave me some hope that they are not buying into this bullshit. The fact that we need to put hands on our troops, we need to get right. Pete Hegseth needs so badly to have hands put on him for a minute. He needs to have actually experienced some of the things that he wants the military, new young men, I will say, because he's
Listen, he
not.
just wants young, hot guys in the military. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's just tons of fat generals walking around, including Donald Trump, because he considers himself a general. I mean, I don't know if at any point in time there was not one general that there was a picture of one of them rolling their eyes. And I mean, it's like, thank God, at least we may still have that, because him talking about making training grounds, cities, is not just him talking. He would truly do that if there was a way, and I'm sure he's trying to find it right now. He's doing it with the National Guard, but if he could truly do it with the military, I think he would try it. I think
He is
he would
trying
do
it.
it. He is trying it. Yeah, absolutely. And I live in a very red state. I would never once say that I enjoy living in this red state. There's nothing in Oklahoma. The funny thing about the superintendent who's now gone, that just got changed, and we're 50th in education, saying, well, every teacher that comes here must take a woke test. It's like, no teacher is coming to Oklahoma, so don't worry. I don't even know what's on the woke test, but don't worry. No one's recruiting and moving here to live here because they want to. Uh,
Right.
that would be insane. One, I don't even
Coincidentally,
think.
by the way, my last business trip in 2020 was right before the shutdown, 3 weeks, I think, before the shutdown. It was to Oklahoma City. And what I found odd about that, even though, it was wintertime, it was February, um, it was like empty. The like, we had a conference in the downtown area. We were there a few days, and like I remember one day I walked to grab lunch, and like I'm in the middle of downtown and there was nobody there. It was very strange.
Hmm. Well, I think that the downtown. I would say probably the only thing that Oklahoma can say right now that is benefiting them is the basketball team. It's bringing in a ton of money, especially since they won the NBA championship this year. The Thunder is bringing in a lot of money to the city, but short of that, there is, I mean, nothing that the cost of living is low, I suppose, but also it is like number 50th for women's health. And that is because we have signed on to this same Roe v. Wade situation as close to what Texas does. And that old slogan, "You can't mess with Texas." Oh, yes, you can. Donald Trump has just done it. I mean,
Mm.
I'm in Arkansas, so I feel you. Um, we also have a complete and total AB ban like Texas does. No exception, nothing. Yeah. It's it's shit. We also are super super low on education as well. I want to say we're either like 47th or 43rd. It's one of those. I'd have to look it up again. But yeah. Yeah, it's super red state. It's shit, and I don't understand how so many people here vote against their own interests constantly.
yeah,
We're poor states.
yeah.
We don't and especially like with because Arkansas farmers are one of the big farming states that really got hardcore affected by it, and now they're asking for another bailout, and they're just going to continue to support him.
I mean, I think that, of course, Oklahoma being a large farming area as well, it is overwhelmingly amazing to me how dumb the thought process is in getting from point A to point B. But I also think that the red states being in general, typically the poorest and the lowest in education, and the most affected by climate change, short of California and Florida. We have tornadoes constantly here. I'm sure in Arkansas you guys do too. Texas does with the hurricanes, and all the lower southern states with hurricanes. I guess the only benefit to that, short of him running FEMA out of money, is that he'll continue to give red states money after a tornado blows over a city, and then we just rebuild it back up, and then a year later it blows back down again.
Well, he doesn't though, because we had that happen here in Arkansas. We had in 24 hours we had over 14 tornadoes, and
Wow.
then 3 days later we had massive flooding. Entire communities were washed away. We had to declare a state of emergency, and of course our governor is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, so is his own former press secretary, and she very publicly pleaded with him to send aid to Arkansas, and he said no, figure it out
Yep.
yourselves.
Yep.
Even Tom Cotton, our senator, who's like ultra MAGA, publicly pleaded with him for help, and he said no, figure it out yourselves. We never got help.
What's I think what was most telling to me was when the Texas floods occurred. And mind you, these are preventable events. I love Republican states who could prevent things but then react after the fact, which I think is their biggest problem. But this was a preventable event. They were given money for the infrastructure to fix this before it happened. And then now it's happened, and children's lives were lost. But we came down as a group, a medical group, to come and help. And as we were leaving on day 4, coming up I-35 in Texas, and we're a red state just above them, it's obviously MAGA people that have signs saying, "You liberals, go fucking home. We never wanted you here to begin with." It was so awful and horrible. And then I thought to myself, you know what, the next time something happens, will there be a response? Even from your own red counterparts, will there be a response? Because that was just absolutely beyond disrespectful and rude. You know, we didn't get paid for it. It was time we took off to go down and help. And I watched as Mexico literally sent their own firefighters, and they were arrested and taken away when they were needed. It was insane to me.
Yeah,
And
the whole thing
I don't
is
get it.
amazing to me that red states are so dependent on blue states.
They are.
Red states are helped tremendously by immigrants in many ways, not only cheap labor, but they pay into the system that red states take advantage of more than any other states. And it's not even
Absolutely.
close. It's by a huge margin. And you can drill down state, county, city, whatever. It's the information stays the same. It's red states that are taking advantage of all these programs like EBT, Medicaid, Medicare, Section 8, Social Security, and immigrants pay into that without being able to get those things, which I think is disgusting. But they're angry at those people. They're angry at Democrats for reasons that they can never articulate, and they're not angry at the people that they keep voting in that keep them poor and keep them with no opportunity, no education, no nothing. But they're mad at the brown folks.
And that's why I say, you know, as much as I said that I think that Democrats should die on this hill with this shutdown, now I kind of think, you know what? Let it reopen. Let their Mike Johnson's quote unquote clean resolution go through, and let the Republicans say, "Oh, we reopened the government. We're the heroes. You know, we finally broke the Democrats down." Even though the bottom line is, if Mike Johnson would get his ass back to work and bring Congress back, they could go over the filibuster and they have the majority to open the government themselves, which, if people would pay attention to that, they would know the government could be opened by Mike Johnson. But, you know,
Yeah.
let's just face it, he's trying to keep them away because no one wants to deal with the Epstein files. That's the bottom line here.
Yeah,
But
I've been mentioning that like they have the majority, like they don't actually need the 60 votes to pass it and all of that. They have the majority. They could do a temporary rule change where they could pass the continuing resolution by simple majority rather than by the 60 votes that they say are needed. Mike Johnson could choose to reopen the government today without a single Democratic vote.
Right.
He could
exactly.
choose to reopen it today and pass that continuing resolution today if he wanted to. But they're doing the exact same thing that they're going to do with the big, beautiful bill. They're going to find a way to blame the Democrats for it because, like with the big, beautiful bill that, like you were mentioning earlier, and how it's going to really affect people, especially, you know, people in red states, they've structured it in such a way that most of those things are not going to take place and go into effect until after midterms. And of course, we anticipate there being some sort of shift and there being a blue majority, most likely in the House of Representatives. So that way, they can start saying, "Oh, well, yeah, you're hurting really bad now because all those things are going to into effect." Well, that didn't start happening until we had a blue majority, until, you know, the Dems took over. Now you can just blame the Dems for it because you're hurting right now, and now is when we have a Democratic majority in the House. I mean, I hate to give credit, but, you know,
Mhm.
politically and strategically, it was a smart move.
Yeah,
It
Trump did
was,
the
but
same thing
here's
in his
where they
first
still
term, by
get
the
it.
way. at the end of 2020, he reached out to the OPEC countries and asked them to diminish their oil production, and they did, and that obviously caused the price to go up, and then it was the Democrats that would take blame for it.
This is why I feel like, since, Americans have to see immediate gratification or immediate hurt to really make a political change or decision, this is where I feel like it really could put it much quicker in front of them than even what the big beautiful bill will do. I think that with healthcare, if it goes up November 1st, enrollment starts, and these are already set in stone issues that Mike Johnson can't fix in 7.5 weeks. And then by January 1st, they're paying these premiums. That, I think, puts the blue wave more in focus for the midterms than anything else, because healthcare is a huge issue for Americans. We don't have universal healthcare. People can say what they want about what's good and bad about it, but we don't have that. And even if you are a middle class, $100,000 a year making person, and you're unable to afford insurance because you're having to go to a privatized insurance company and you have a pre-existing condition, and they say either it's going to cost a fortune or we won't take you at all, or something of that nature, it is very difficult for you to see outside of the emergency room or, a urgent care center. It's hard for you to get health care.
Look at this. Look at
Climate.
this. Look at this comment from Alan Johnson. I'm all for health care for Americans only. Well, that's what the fuck we're talking about, you fucking idiot. Oh
Yeah,
my
fun
God.
fact, that's already the federal regulation.
Yeah.
On the federal level, that's already how it is. If you get into undocumented immigrants having health care, that goes into Medicaid, which is state run. So take that up with the state, not the federal government.
And even if you want to take it up with the state, don't forget that if you screw around with giving funding to hospitals in states, what's going to happen, and it's already starting to happen, is rural hospitals have to close. And
Yep.
then you have desert areas where there is no health care for hundreds of miles. And then it comes into when something happens to you, like for farmers in my state that live hundreds of miles, you end up having to call us, the Metaflight team. Do you know what a Metaflight ride costs you one way? I mean, it is over the top, and you may just have something that is serious. But if an IMSA ride or an ambulance ride could have taken you to a 10-minute away place, it would have been different than the fact that you live hundreds of miles. So this is going to affect rural hospitals first, and
They're
they will
already
close. And
closing.
they're already, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're already closing. We have 20 in Oklahoma that are set to close within the rest of this fiscal year. 20 small hospitals. That is a huge problem for the fact that our state is so spread out in its healthcare, except for the two large metropolitan cities of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Outside of that, it becomes more and more rural the further you go. And the Panhandle, southern parts of Oklahoma. There's deserts. There's areas where there's just nothing. And as far as trauma care, there's two trauma hospitals, Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We have the large VA hospital in Oklahoma City. Veterans have to come hundreds of miles to go to the VA. Those smaller VA independent pop-up spots that came up, they're going to end up having to close their doors. I don't understand why Americans don't get this. This has nothing to do with immigration.
Well,
This
no,
has to do with
it's
how we're.
very simple, unfortunately. And I'll end with this because I'm going to get going. But Americans, unfortunately, this is a dumb country, just in general. Of course, that doesn't mean that there are no smart people here. There's tons. But there's too high a percentage of the population that's just dumb people. And one of the things I use as an example for that is the recent poll that asked dumb voters, like, would you vote for him still if he was convicted of being a PDF file? And 47% of his voters said yes. So if you look at the number of people that cast their vote for him last year, that's 36 million people that were like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the president being a PDF file. That's over 10% of the estimated population in America. That's and that's not just the number of dumb people. I think it's way higher than that. Because we don't put any regulations on stupidity, right? And
Mhm.
these people get to vote, and they get to operate heavy machinery, and they get to drive, and they get to be amongst us. And it's a real problem because they don't understand anything. They don't understand that America is the only developed country on earth without universal health care. And I had the opportunity to talk to people from around the world because of the stuff I used to do, and I asked all of them about their health care, right? And if they had any complaints about it, they were nuisance complaints. Like, yes, sometimes it takes long for non-emergency things and et cetera, et cetera. But I always asked every one of them the same question at the end. Well, given the issues with it, do you want to get rid of it? And none of them said yes. None of them wants to get rid of their universal health care. Nobody wants to get rid of free college. Nobody wants to get rid of free child care, right? And clean air and clean water and clean food. Nobody wants to get rid of these things in these other countries. America spends more per capita on health care and gets the worst outcomes. So this
We're all
idea that this is a great country and this is the best country on earth and the best country of all time, it's all fucking nonsense. Look at the actual results. Forget the propaganda. Show me the fucking results. Because when you look at the results, it paints a real different picture and vividly.
Yeah, it's also the leading cause of bankruptcy in the
Yeah,
United States
yeah.
is medical debt.
Yeah, I mean, so if you break your leg, you could lose your house. If you have a heart attack or any long-term illness, you're going to lose everything. And no other country that is decent in the slightest is set up this way. Like in China, they don't know what it means to lose their house. Once they buy their house, it's theirs. They're not losing it because there's no property tax on the house. And no matter how broke you are, no one is going to take your house away from you. So say whatever you want about China, but they're happy, right? But anyway, I can go on and on about this. But thank you, ladies. I appreciate your contribution to the live today. I always say that my lives are better because of my panel. If I was just up here ranting, it would be all right, but it wouldn't be as fun for me, and it certainly wouldn't be as fun for the audience. So thank you both for being here. Thank you for the folks that were in the chat making excellent comments. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your time. I go twice a day, 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Saturday. And I'll probably keep this same topic for tonight. And I'm sure by tonight I'll have more horrible facts to talk about. But until we see each other again, peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon.
Thank you guys.